Hi everyone, we're back again to a fresh new episode of today's Collaborate, where we have conversations with amazing leaders from different industries. Today we have Charles Onu, the founder and CEO of Ubenwa Health. Welcome, Charles.
Thank you very much, Chika. Pleasure to be here with you.
Yeah, I'm being sincere right now. I'm happy and I'm excited. I'm having this conversation with you today. And I know we've said this off camera, but I got to know about the Benwa Health 2 years ago, and I love the idea, I love the solution you're building, and I knew that our paths would cross, and that was why I connected with you on LinkedIn. So, but first, before we start talking about Ubenwa, I just wanted to ask you how has it been? Basically, what's your background? What has it been before even thinking of starting Ubenwa Health? What was your career journey like?
Yeah, sure. Happy to share some of that.
Yeah.
So, we'll see how far back I go with this.
Yeah,
But
sure.
maybe today, yes. I spend most of my time running Ubenwa and and building this startup. But I didn't grow up, thinking I would have a startup, or
Mhm.
at no point was I thinking, oh, I want to be an entrepreneur. I always knew I wanted to this have full control over the things I worked on and things I did, but I never like it wasn't a thing I know because some people have that, and I think it's a gift actually, but mine was more of happenstance building and eventually deciding that this thing I was doing as research had a big potential in the world as well. But where did that come from? So for me, I would say the things that have led me to here is just following my love for mathematics. So let's just put
Oh,
it simply. I growing up, math was always my easy subject. When it
wow.
came to exams, the night before math was the night I had the best sleep.
I ran away from
Because
math always. I'm not too good in math.
yeah. So you know how like during the exam period you're always jacking, reading the last piece of the textbook before the night of the exam, chemistry, physics. I'll study till like midnight, 1 a.m. before going to bed. Math was like, whew, that was like holiday day for me. It was in part because I love math so much that before it got to the exams, I've actually solved all the questions in the textbooks.
Are you kidding
Um,
me?
yeah. My brother and I would just like, excuse me, we would just like work on it every day after school as our hobby thing. And so by the end of the term, before the end of the term, we've solved all the exercises in all the chapters of general maths. This book we had in Nigeria, if you remember. And so it was just a walk in the park, anyways. But it was a combination of like I loved it and I spent a lot of time doing it and it became like an easy thing for me. But what that led to, I would say, was at the point it was time to go to uni after secondary school.
Mhm.
I found myself in this dilemma because up to that point, even though I loved math, what I always told everybody I was going to be was a doctor. And as you know, in
Oh,
Nigeria, when you are first in your class, everybody says you'll be a doctor. That's like the top thing if you're first,
yeah,
like science class.
exactly.
Um, and so I told everybody, family, friends, whoever wanted to listen, that I'll be a doctor. My dad had made it personal. It was his mission to make me a doctor.
As
But when the
usual.
time came to like apply for job and the subjects were to write for entrance to university. I don't know if your audience are mainly Nigerians. If I should stick with Nigerian parlance like jam and all those things, or
Go ahead, go ahead, go ahead.
yeah. But the subjects turned out to be for medicine: chemistry, physics, biology, and English. And I'm
Yeah,
like, where's the maths? That was
yeah.
my first like realization that there was no maths in medicine. And so I ended up in this dilemma: like, should I do medicine, which I want to be, like be a doctor, or do I do something that has to be math, which is what like keeps me going? Like the thing I just wake up I want to do. And so it was actually quite a challenging decision. Like, I was 16, 17 at the time, but I remember having sleepless nights in the literal sense of the word, meaning I would go to bed, look at the ceiling, like looking at the ceiling like around the 10, 11, and at 5 a.m. I'm still looking at the ceiling thinking, which one should I pick? The thing I like to be or the thing I want to do? You
Yeah.
know. Long story short, anyways, after battles with myself and my parents, I left medicine and decided to do engineering because I felt I just needed to do math, and that was it. And so I did electrical engineering in Futo in Owerri, um, and did that for 5 years. Really enjoyed it thoroughly. I had my doubts in the first few years as to should I have done medicine, but eventually it was resolved, and I was happy I did that because engineering is just like really powerful. You get to build things, you get to see how the world works. Like the world is engineering. And so that part of it and learning about how everything around us works, from cars to TV to everything, just made it very enriching. So leaving that, I went to work, in Nigeria. I was working in Port Harcourt at the time as a software engineer in the oil and gas sector. That was also really fun because it combined the math that I loved as well as software development now.
Oh, that's
And
a
it's
very
just, it's well
solid
experienced.
combination.
It was actually, there's quite a lot of science I came to realize in the oil and gas sector. Um, and and so the what happened during that time. So I worked about 3.5 years in Nigeria, but at the point I realized that okay, I was saturating. At the beginning, the job
Mm.
was exciting. I was learning a lot of things. It felt so
Hmm.
great.
Yeah.
But at some point, I felt like, hey, I knew everything I was in this job now. If they, at the beginning, if they gave me a task to do, I'll be so afraid that can I learn all I need to learn to do it? But then 2 years in, 3 years in, I was no more like afraid like that. It was easy. I was in everything. So I felt like I was not being challenged too much anymore. And I started thinking of the next thing. And so medicine again came back to the
Are
front
you
of my
kidding
mind.
me?
Like my love for medicine remained. Like even though I wasn't studying medicine,
Yeah.
throughout my undergrad, many of my friends did medicine. So I was always like in touch with them, always like staying in touch with the literature too in some ways. And so what I decided then was that I was going to try to do my master's in like applying math in medicine
Okay.
effectively,
Beautiful.
and and at the time this was like 2014, just to put time into perspective. At the time, what became clear to me I had to do was machine learning, which was AI was not yet a big topic we are talking about in the news
Yes,
at this
true.
time,
True. It wasn't.
but through like just like digging and going through tunnels, the internet, I decided that machine learning was the thing I wanted to do. It was math intensive, and it was something I felt like could have a real impact in the way we deliver medicine. Disease detection, diagnosis was like the kind of thing I was interested in at the time. And so I started looking for professors working on machine learning in medicine around the world. And Canada became like a core destination where I found a bunch of them. Then moved to Montreal to do masters, then PhD at McGill University in Montreal. So I'll say that's sort of the short trajectory that led me here, and sort of eventually now equipped me with both like my love and skill in math, but also now knowledge about problems in medicine and how we can potentially use that to solve problems there. Yeah. So that was a long answer to your question, but
Yeah,
hopefully
makes a lot of
was
sense,
a
Charles.
good
And
context.
it's exciting how you just took us down memory lane in just a few minutes and took us brought us back. Nice, nice, nice.
Yeah.
So it's you know what people say sometimes about overnight success. I don't believe in that. Um, there's always a beginning where someone, even a great leader, starts. There's always signs to show that someone will really do well in something, and it's basically showing from when you started in school doing pretty well in maths and down now. But at what point, first of all, I will allow you to tell us in details what Ubenwa health is. I don't want to use my words. I want you to explain to us, tell us, in the simplest way possible, what Ubenwa is and why you decided to go for it, basically.
Yeah, absolutely. Excuse me. So at the heart of it, Ubenwa, our goal there really is to improve pediatric care using voice and AI. Simple, simple enough as a statement. And the question is, how do we get to this mission?
Yeah,
Eventually, well, you know this. What Ubenwa means in
yeah,
Igbo.
yeah. You go
Um,
ahead,
yes, Ubenwa means the cry of a baby.
baby. Yeah.
Yes, and so that's where sort of that anchor of voice started for us. Um, during my work, with hospitals here in Canada, but also even with NGOs in Nigeria. So in undergrad, I was a part of an organization called Students in Free Enterprise,
Okay.
now known as Enactus. And but through this time, working in like different settings with healthcare providers, realized that many times there are like experienced, whether it's midwives or in some cases neonatologists, who can basically interpret infants' cries
Okay.
in a sense that they can hear a baby crying and say, the cry sounds weird, like it doesn't sound good, something might be
Yes.
wrong, and usually
Yes.
they are right. And so
Yes.
for me, it was this idea that if there is something that humans learn to detect through listening, through listening to thousands and thousands of cries and experiences, then it makes sense that something that machines can learn too. And then if machines can learn to interpret baby's cries, it means we can take it from these like minority expert people who are doing black magic to like the population. We can make it available in low cost devices. We can make it available as monitoring tools for parents to use at home. And all of a sudden, the entire population is equipped to understand infants, to understand the only language they actually have, their cries. And it makes sense if you think about it that babies have evolved to communicate with us with basically the only language they have developed through time. And so that became sort of the anchor point for we to say how can we improve pediatric care with AI, but specifically with voice AI in this case, in the case of infant care. And so yeah, that's what we're trying to do at Benua, and this is sort of how we got into that space.
Yeah, exciting. What were some of the challenges? Like, because first of all, what you're doing has, I don't know of any if it's been done before, but has it? There's something we call a market maker, some that has never existed before, more like a category king. Has it been done before? Has someone else tried it and probably, or was it just fresh from ground zero?
It was a mix of both. So there
Okay.
was research done by academics a long, long time ago around which basically was what clinical academics, which basically was what excuse me told me that there was something worth pursuing here
Yeah.
because I had the experiential evidence of like seeing doctors I had worked with in the clinical settings like use the cry as a clue to the baby's health. But then there was now like a body of research of people saying that because of the way cry is produced in infants, it's directly controlled by the brain and the central nervous system. That when the baby is having some medical issues that affect the central nervous system, it will also change the patterns of their cry. And like crying is basically an involuntary action in kids. So there was actually quite a bunch of research by clinicians from the 80s, 70s in this space. And so that provided like the basis for some of the diseases that we started pursuing as well to say, okay, these are the conditions that impact the central nervous system or the respiratory system, and then these are the pool of things that we should actually try and study because we can't detect just anything from cries. We can't detect maybe chickenpox from cries. It has to be like a
Yeah.
certain set of things that actually will be impacted, and so that really was the bedrock for us to get started. But in terms of operationalizing this. There was no company doing this. There was no organization like building solutions to be used in the real world for analyzing cries. And so that in that sense, we were like the first, as I'm aware of, to say let's build a diagnostic tool using cry sounds. Yeah.
Fantastic. Makes a lot of sense. And, you know, when you see something unique, but I think maybe my background has exposed me to a lot.
Mm,
Because when I started out in software sales, every single day I get to look through softwares like between 15, minimum of 15 to 50 softwares on the internet.
mm,
I get to skim through, oh, what is this person doing? So it exposed me to a whole lot of solutions. So I'm able to sift through, oh, this is really amazing. Oh, I've not seen this before. I guess probably when I was scouring through the internet was when I saw Ubenwa. I'm like, oh, okay,
mm.
I've not heard, this is, grandiose. And I had to track the LinkedIn profile and then I saw you, I'm like, this is my brother. And that was how I, came about. So It's not easy being a market maker because when I was working as a salesperson at Cast 45 back in Lagos, Nigeria, it was basically the first platform that made it easier for people to buy and sell cars. There was something the
Mm.
CEO said that it's very difficult to be a market maker because you're paving the way for others. When others are coming, they'll just basically ride on what you've already done, and then it's easy for them to shoot out, right?
Yeah.
It comes with huge challenges. It's only someone that hasn't built something that will think is all a walk in the park. So for you, right, despite your solid knowledge in your sound, I don't even need to, everybody that, knows what he's doing will know that you are. However, it's obvious that there were some tough challenges that were faced at the early stages of Ubenwa Health, right? Would you mind sharing with us what those challenges were? Um, the ones that were figured out, how it was figured out, and things of that sort. If you had some sort of network of mentors that also helped you to probably point you in the right direction, okay, this is probably where you should head to, or this is where you should not head to, things of that sort.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I can talk about some of that, like basically challenges on this road to like doing something that had never been done before,
Never been done
and
before.
then how we navigated some of those challenges, right?
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so like you said, there was just like so many. What I came with was my technical skills, and some measure of curiosity. And frankly, when I started, I thought it was just a technical problem I had to solve. Write
Mm.
the code, build the algorithm, drop your mic, and problem solved.
You didn't know
Uh,
there was more. It was more than that.
yeah, yeah. So for me, it was like, yeah, just because at least in my job prior to this, we were writing code. Like we write code, we publish a software, ship it to the client, problem solved, right? But
Yeah.
medicine, I think, poses a very different problem. But not just medicine, but this question of when you're doing something that doesn't exist. Because in the other
Yeah.
case, there's like companies that are using software. We're just like building one new thing to add to the suite of things they are using,
Hmm.
and you're plugging into this, existing package. I'd say the first challenge that was worth highlighting here is that of data, having access to
Oh,
data to build the models.
okay.
Yeah. So as you know, everybody might know now with machine learning and AI, you need data to learn and build stuff. And then quickly realize that there's no hospital basically collecting babies' cries as part of medical records.
Hmm.
Um, so how do we actually get cry data to build our models? Are we just going to write algorithms that are naked effectively? And so that was like one challenge. The way we addressed this was one, I mentioned as some academics were looking into this a long, long time ago. We were fortunate to get a very small database from some of those academics. This was in Mexico. They still had the cry database. We got access to it after like email exchanges with them and so on, and then we're able to use that to prove the concept. And that's like maybe one
Oh.
lesson here is that sometimes the road is long, and I need to ask, okay, what's like a small part of this journey that I can bite off, I can solve, that will unlock the next one, that will show stakeholders, whoever your stakeholder is now, that okay, there is something here, let's pursue it, or that would even motivate you to continue, right? Because when you look at a mountain, say you're going hiking, so massive, but
Yeah.
if you just the key thing is to take that first step and take
Yeah.
next step and just see it as series of several steps. And so in a sense, frankly, I would say I was thinking about it in this structured fashion when we
Hmm.
started, because
Hmm.
I was like, I need data, and we found this data
Yeah.
somewhere.
Yeah.
We worked with it. It got us to the next level of awareness. We were able to raise awareness that okay, this is possible. I was able to take this to doctors now, both in Nigeria and here in Canada, to say, see what we think is possible, see what we've done about it, see what we learned from the data we used. If we have more data, we can actually potentially solve this problem. And it's funny enough, I thought this was going to be a hard thing to get doctors to be on board, because basically, to come back to the data problem, to
Mhm.
collect data for this kind of problem, we need to do it in hospitals. we need to collect it because we're trying to match cries to medical diagnosis, and there's no other place to get those diagnoses other than with clinicians. And so the key thing was, how do we convince clinicians to work with us to get this data? I thought it was going to be hard, but funny enough, when we started talking to them, it was very easy.
Oh,
You know,
really?
like
Why do you think it was easy?
why it became easy? Well, I think it became easy for a few reasons. One was, the top one perhaps, was that doctors already knew this. This wasn't news to them, that the baby's cry can tell you about their health. As I mentioned, it was actually by working with doctors that I decided to work on this ultimately.
Mm-hmm.
And so for them, it was already an instinct they have from their medical training or medical practice. And all they just needed was someone who has the technical expertise to build the solution with them. And so from that point of view, all of them were excited to like be a part of working on this thing that, was an instinctive knowledge for them. I think that was probably by far the biggest point. Secondly, and I came to realize this part later, I had spent, because I didn't have any doctors I was working with initially, and I was just trying to run this alone because I always thought it was just a technical problem I would just solve and be done with it. I basically went on and like read so much medical material, medical literature about like the diseases we're targeting, how they operate, how it functions, how it affects patients. And so when I pitched to the doctors, for some reason they all thought I was a medical doctor too. Because I
Oh.
was basically speaking their language. And it was, I say I realized this later because it was sometime later, one of them, I've forgotten how we came to know, maybe from LinkedIn or we connected somehow online. Then you
Yeah.
realize that my entire training was in engineering. And so, but I think they thought I had some kind of mixed, medicine, computing
Mm.
background, but they didn't know I had no medical training at all. And so I think, but being able to speak the language is one thing that also helped like ease the ground. They felt like this person has put in the effort to understand what they are talking about. There's you could come and talk about something and it's clear that you don't know what you're saying.
True.
So I think
True.
I would say a combination of those two things, but pretty much the first part, for the most part, made it easy to get to working with clinicians. And so that was basically another like challenge, hurdle that we had to overcome was doing clinical studies is not the simplest thing. Working with
I heard.
doctors because hospitals are not designed, at least in quotes, to do research. They're designed to treat patients and care for them.
Yes. True.
Research is just a secondary thing you need to do on the side. And next thing you know is you have to go through ethics. Ethics
Yeah.
takes long because it's not, they meet like once a month. But also they are like trying to check off the boxes to make sure that whatever you're doing is not interfering with the primary reason the hospital is established. And so you go through all these cycles of actually trying to do medical research, which just makes it a really long process that I had no anticipation of. I was just thinking, oh, we'll just go 1 month, 2 months, we're done. Next thing you know, 2 years, we're still like collecting data and doing research. So that's sort of another lesson I'd say that came out of that. But one key thing this helped us with, which is another point I think you mentioned around how did advisors play a role in this, was that by like reaching out to all these clinicians, we then ended up surrounding ourselves with so many such clinical knowledge and depth and experience that at least we had these people to be there to guide, to inform, and to direct the things we're doing. So I'll say these were like two challenges. I could talk about maybe a third challenge, which would be around the business side of things, and this
Yes.
is
I
where I
want
go back to
to
where I
hear
say
more
that
about that.
where I go to say that I started working on this not from the point of view of I wanted to build a business. It
Yeah.
was just an interesting problem I saw. I started working, it started evolving and evolving until we said, okay, let's make a company from
Yeah.
this research. But the consequence of doing this is of going through this route was that I wasn't thinking about, okay, if we build a solution, who will pay for it? How do we charge them? How do we make money from it? I just thinking of let's just solve this problem,
Yeah.
as opposed to say someone who's like, I want to start a business. Let me go and look for a problem and then say, okay, how do I make money from this problem? I can make money via this way, and then they start that business. After verifying they can make money. Whereas ours were like, okay, well, let's just solve the problem. Money was like, I don't know how I was thinking about it, but I was just not thinking about how we make money
Hmm.
ultimately.
Okay.
But one of the things that happens is that caught up with us because by the time we started building key aspects of the technology and we started getting ready different
Yeah.
components, we realized that okay, what's next? How are we going to sell this thing? There was like this moment
Yeah,
of
yeah,
how do we sell this to
yeah.
the world?
True.
And so basically, we could have had a few months, years of solving that problem of the business model. But anyways, we started solving it at this time when we like went through the first round of research
Yeah,
and the different algorithms were now ready to deploy. So that's just like one lesson, even no matter how like idealistic we are as a scientist or problem solvers, um, you know, the world runs on money and delivering value in exchange for money.
true,
That's how a company survives. That's how
true.
a human survives, even to pay their rent and so on. And so thinking about that from the onset is such something that could help one do better because you also get the right advisors on board. You start putting the right steps in place, whether it's talking to the right customers upfront and so on. Yeah.
Yeah. I like how you're like, businesses, for me, I don't know about others. I think the best of businesses don't always start as businesses.
Mm.
It always starts as something. That's why I don't find it difficult to teach. It's just something within me, right? It's something that even if you wake me up now, come and teach this thing, something I know I'll do very well. I can do it 3 hours, I've not even eaten. And for me, running sales boot camps for years, even without really concentrating on how much I'm making, just gives me joy, right? Waking up, seeing my students do very well,
Yeah.
get remote roles from Africa, paying them in good money. It gives me happiness. I'm happy. I'm okay. Of course, you also need to think about how to sustainably run the business so that it will keep standing and you could get more people tomorrow. So
Yeah.
for me, I think the best of businesses always starts with you want to solve a problem. You are connected with that problem. It's something that you're personally interested in, and it helps you even when the going gets tough. You have a different, you're deeply rooted to it. You don't give up easily, even when you face
Yeah.
challenges. I
Yeah.
think
That's a good point, right? Because when challenges come, and because things never be smooth, right? Well, when
yeah,
challenges come
oh,
and there's at least a part of you that just wants to be doing this because you love this and
exactly.
because you really care about this problem, you'll be more motivated to roll your sleeves up and face them headlong. Yeah.
Exactly. Now, would you say that Ubenwa really started when you kicked off your master's or your PhD? At what point would you say this was when Ubenwa really started?
Yeah, there's as with all things, there's no
Yeah,
clear cut point. I could give
yeah,
you a date, but
true.
I started thinking about this for a long time.
Mhm.
Started reading, for some time. I actually registered the company during my masters.
Oh,
Yes, when I registered the company, quickly realized that it was not trivial to run a company while doing a master's degree.
oh,
So I basically packed it for a while to went finish my master's degree. Um, and then it was after I transitioned to my PhD, did my what we call the comprehensive exams, the first year where you take courses, and
yeah,
then like defend the idea you want to pursue for your PhD,
yeah,
and then now you have time to do research. That was when I now like went, full time into running the business. So I'll say that we raised our first our pre-seed round of capital in 2022. So that's when I'll say things really took off. But we
okay,
started the clinical research in 2020 with our clinical partners in like the different countries we worked with. And that's when also like that was like probably the first major inflection point was
okay,
getting the clinicians on board and getting those studies started. It was very nicely lined up with COVID. So what that meant too
yeah,
was we started as soon as we started, we had to shut down again because of COVID for almost a
COVID,
year.
yeah,
So 2021 was when we now resumed the new studies, and then the world COVID was still there, but I think the world has started accepting it as part of life essentially at
yeah,
that point. Yeah.
became sort of normal. Now, let's shift a bit and um, talk a bit about the business aspect of the business and people management.
Hmm.
Because as leaders, you just can't run away from it. It's an integral part of the business. Even when you probably weren't thinking of it initially, but it is what it is. There's some areas of the business that just have to be done, no matter how you think maybe it's not your thing.
Mhm.
At the early stage, how were you? How did you peak when you felt like, okay, I think this is something I need to form a team, probably a team of two, three, four, 5 persons, and maybe the clinical partners as well. What were for you? What was your approach to forming that early team? Because it's crucial. The foundation really would play a huge role in how fast things, ideas are executed, tasks are followed up on, and you
Mhm.
achieve things much more faster. What was your approach? What were you looking out for when you were trying to build that first initial team?
Yeah, it was actually quite simple. It was, asking the question of what needs to be done and who do I need to, which parts can I do and which parts can I not do,
Yeah.
you know. And sometimes it was the parts you cannot do is one thing, and this is one thing, say, high flyers can fall into a risk of, is seeing the things you cannot do as only things you don't have the skill to do. Sometimes
Mm,
you actually have the skill, but you can't do it because you simply can't be in two places at the same time.
exactly.
When you're running the company, you only
Yeah.
have limited amount of time and you need to choose what you devote your time to, and the other things you just let go to someone else so that you can actually work as a team and move forward. And so for me, it was after I decided that, okay, what's the unique value I bring to the company, and what can I outsource or I just literally need help with. And it turned out to be two things. I had trained as an engineer, worked as a software engineer, transitioned into data science and machine learning, and did that for the previous 9 years, now up to this point. And so the most recent thing I had been doing was machine learning and AI research and development. And so I said, okay, this part is mine. But we had to do clinical research. So I needed someone who was strong in like working with clinicians who had experience and knew what it meant to do clinical research, as well. And so hence my co-founder, Samantha, who has a PhD in experimental medicine from McGill. We
Oh,
met during our PhDs actually,
oh, nice.
collaborating with our supervisors, were collaborators, and so we worked together quite a bit then. And so that was like the clinical part. The other part was software, right? Software has to be built amongst everything.
Yeah.
But I had not been building software at this point for about 6 years, let's say. Um, and so instead of me saying I want to now go and start like doing something that I had left a few years ago,
Yeah.
then I got my colleague Innocent. We went to undergrad together in Owerri, and
Okay.
so we've been friends for the longest time. And so I just knew he was a solid engineer,
Yeah.
and so I extracted him from where he was working to join us. And so that was basically the three of us that were now the co-founders, with me being the AI head, Innocent engineering, Samantha with the clinical aspect of the work. And so yeah, it was more about like what did we need and what did I decide that, okay, I couldn't do this now because there's so much to do with the business that I just have to, allocate that to someone else effectively.
You know, I could connect a lot with what you said because I remember when I was trying to um, start teaching software sales. I remember hitting up my friend in college, telling him, "Oh, this is what I want. I just need a simple WordPress website." So he's the one that's always helping me with anything technical. So
Yeah.
it's always good to have solid guys in your network that you could count on. But was it difficult for it's easy because Samantha already knew what you were working on, so it's easy to probably convince her. But was it difficult to convince Innocent to understand where you're heading to?
In a sense case, no, not at all. And there's a reason, is because, as I mentioned, we went to undergrad together. We met during our undergrad, precisely, and we then stayed really close as friends. So
Oh, okay.
we
It was
would
easy.
visit each other. We worked on other software projects together, even.
Mhm.
So we're very close. So even all through the time I started working on the BNY, he was also aware that I was trying to do this thing. So it
Mm,
wasn't even news to him when I said, "Okay,
yeah,
let's work on it together." In
yeah.
fact, I don't even know if there was a moment in which I asked him, let's do it together. Chances were that I was just like asking him for
It's
things to
just
help me do
happy.
things, and then he just
Yeah,
became a part of it automatically.
yeah, yeah.
For Savannah, there was a point in which I asked her, but for Innocent, it was just like a natural thing because we were just so close together. Yeah.
I like that. And
In fact, it was part of choosing the name Ubenwa too. But
oh,
yeah, when I was like, because I sourced the name from between him and another close friend of ours called
mm,
Kevin. So the three of us were basically brainstorming the name at the time, and so yeah,
yeah,
it.
it's really unique. It's unique. It's a unique name, and I love it. So now, for you, for Ubenwa, what's the plan? What's the direction? Are there things you're currently working on, or the team is currently working on that probably be rolled out pretty soon? And yeah, would you mind share with us?
Yeah, I can talk about what we have right now in the market, and
Yeah.
maybe a glimpse as to what's to come.
Yeah.
As per what's right now there, so anybody can go to the App Store in any country right now
Okay.
to download our app called Nanni AI.
Okay.
So Nanny with an I at the end, not a Y. And
Okay.
Nanny AI is an app basically that we built now that from our years of research that allows parents to basically ask the question of why is my baby crying and what
Okay.
can I do about it? So you basically tap a button, record a baby's cry. It analyzes it, matches the patterns to our massive database,
Yeah.
and then gives you the reason for crying, and then also goes ahead to give you a ranked recommendations as to what will likely solve the cry.
Yeah.
Excuse me. So that's just gives like some of the numbers. Gone really well. We now have users in over 200 countries around the world.
That's huge.
Over 4 million cries translated now to date.
Oh, that's
Yeah, yeah.
huge.
So it's massive, and parents are really loving it. We get messages. That's the best part. Actually, I did not anticipate is that we
Yeah.
get messages from parents like almost every other week, every week. I
Wow.
mean, where they say, "Oh, thank you." Some even like are praying for us, literally in the message. Allah blesses you, Allah be with you. I'm like, okay, thank you.
That's
So
nice.
so it's been really good. And that's sort of like just step one, right? That's we have that out there helping parents directly at home, but also actually helping us collect more cry data
Yeah,
to
like
continue to
that.
advance the research, because the clinical part is the hardest part, right? Because not there's a high bar to reach for that to be adopted, accepted as for clinical use. And
Mm.
so the data we're getting from consumers is actually really helping with the clinical research to advance that part of the work. So on that front, we've actually made some real progress to where we've now shown that with over 90% accuracy, we can detect brain injury from baby's cries.
Oh,
Yeah, and this was a study that involved 5 hospitals across 3 countries.
wow.
So we are now taking that and putting it into pilot studies as well now to say put it in practice side by side with a clinician to see how well the model performs in those instances. If that goes well, then we're straight to regulatory to get this approved by regulatory authorities, and then we can now shift this into the medical setting. I should add though that the company has now evolved. As with all companies, you start with something, you learn, you discover
Yeah,
new opportunities, and you squeeze
exactly.
into that. And we're now like broadly in the space of voice and AI, and using voice basically as a biomarker to help in many applications, both in telehealth, for instance, in monitoring in different settings. So we have a number of corporate partners we're now working with to integrate our voice analytics solutions for, say, measuring vital signs just from like voice of a person, like your heart rate can measure from your voice and other things. And so we have a number of applications now that are rolling out very soon with some partners in that front. So basically now move from not just baby cries, but
Baby
just to
cries too.
voice generally, because
Yeah,
the
generally.
sound of our voice is a window to our health. If you think about your wife, whenever she's sick, or if ever
Yeah,
she's sick, I don't know,
yeah.
her voice will change. Like, if you
It
think about it,
changes.
your
True.
voice changes. So that's like
Mm,
just at the basic level. But
yeah.
like, our voice is really connected to our cardiopulmonary system, the heart, the lungs, and everything. It impacts the frequency patterns that occur in our when we speak. And so we're doing a lot of work now on that to sort of expand from the pediatric space and just broadly solve other problems as well. Yeah.
I like that. How much of a big team is Ubenwa right now?
Yeah, we're not a very large team. We're small
Okay.
but mighty.
Yeah.
Yes. I'd say in total, internationally and in Canada, we are about 8 persons now, 7 to 8 persons.
Okay.
Yeah.
How do you, what has been your biggest challenge managing people?
Mm,
Yeah. What aspect of management of people is not easy? It's only someone that has done it that would understand that people are the most
yeah.
difficult thing to manage. Uh, so, what aspect of managing people do you know, find maybe intriguing or challenging at times?
Yeah, that's a good question. And maybe one way to bring this up is also is not even from the aspect of the people you are managing, but from yourself as a leader, actually.
Yes, yes, I agree.
Because if you've never managed people, then you actually don't know anything about managing people, and then you are also learning on the job.
Sure.
That's like one key point, and I think that's probably the biggest factor in all of this. In like running a business is actually how your job changes with every 2 months as the company grows. When you are just you yourself, it's like a different company. Sometimes you have 3 people, then now you have to like coordinate with 3 people to get things done.
Yeah,
And but then it gets easy because ideally you've gotten really um, highly motivated people who can operate on their own, and so everybody comes together. We're like, this is what we want to do. Divide the pie in three. Everybody go into the world, solve the problem. And as you keep growing, you double that to 6 people. Then you might start having some people who maybe need to work with one of the other persons, and then you now start having some small hierarchies there or so. Um, and surprisingly, no matter how small those numbers seem, the one thing I've actually realized is that the way you run the company when you are one is different from three and even six, and then
yes,
even eight, and so on.
yes, I agree.
It just yeah, you have to adapt basically, and I continue to realize that I haven't actually adapted to the new number that we have today, and then I have to like ask myself, how do we restructure our you know monthly or weekly ceremonies to make sure that we have you know things lined up in a way that gets the best out of the team, and so on. So that's probably the biggest challenge is just like remembering and being aware enough to
Yeah,
realize when your job has changed and
yeah,
when you need to adapt in the way you run things. If I look at say other challenges with managing people, I think it's you know there's several parts of this, right? You have to hire as well. So there's hiring,
exactly.
there's managing, and then there's also firing, which is an inevitable part of the job, whether you like it or not.
True.
Um, the hiring part, I think as one challenge there is just like knowing who fits in the team. Many times, not many times, sometimes you'll be wrong
True.
in that
You're
hiring,
human.
but we doing it over and over. You get to learn about who fits into your style of working, the team's, culture, and so on and so forth. So I would say that has been quite a thing. We've actually had to hire and let go of some people just because it wasn't a fit with the team,
Yeah.
or because something changed in our strategy and their role did not become was no longer as useful. But I'd say one of the things that has really really helped with managing the team to perhaps there is like the first people we hired and just making sure that we hired people who were like very independent, very like committed to the mission,
Yeah.
and we're almost like an appendage of myself in a way, just like an appendage of myself with different skill sets. I
Yes.
think that's really played a big role in being able to like manage a team and overcome the challenges inevitably that come up with moving forward. Then, yeah.
That's key. I like how you approach it. It's key because you basically need to connect with people before you can work with them. You need to know what works for them, if it suits into the culture or what's already working in the company, so
Mm.
that there's no mismatch. But now, you as the leader of Ubenwa, there are sometimes downtimes. Um, how do you relax? How do you recharge? What are some things you do to ensure that you're still in the game, right? You're still leading the company the right way. You're still sane because a lot of things can make a founder go mad, like a whole lot. So,
Yep.
what are some little things you do? Some habits you've had for a very long time, or you've had to cultivate to ensure that you're in the right space of mind to lead and direct the team where they should go.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is something that, it can be underrated, especially by people who are trying to achieve big things.
Yeah.
Is like, how do you recharge, refresh, rejuvenate yourself to
Mm-hmm.
get back to doing that difficult work? I would not even claim to be as perfect as anything in this one. I found myself getting carried away every time, and then realizing that, okay, I need to come back to like caring for myself, so I can actually be in the best state to run the business.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you some of the things I've done that has really, really helped me. So on one hand, one thing that's happened through the last decade plus is that I've gotten less patient with fun activities that require me to sit down.
Mm.
So when I was, say, younger, or even up to university, I
Yeah.
loved playing chess, which meant sitting down for
Oh.
like 3 hours, playing video games, which means sitting down
Yeah.
for like hours, and
Yeah.
all of the things we would do indoors and sitting. But the more and more I started working hard and long and sitting down on my computer for like 12 hours a day,
Exactly.
when it was time to take a break, I just couldn't stand sitting down and watching TV anymore. So I these days I probably watch movies like, I don't know, 5 times a year, something. It's
Just
like
like
so
me.
bad.
My wife would say, I'll watch a movie that will sleep off.
Yeah, I just can't do it. Exactly. Lying down might be
Yeah.
the only option. If
Exactly.
say I'm sleeping and it's like my lullaby.
Exactly.
But what I basically ended up doing over the last few years now was actually learning sports, because I wasn't even as very sporty up to,
Hmm.
say 20, 10, 15 years ago. So
Yeah.
what since then I've learned so many things. Like, I play tennis now, squash, I swim.
Nice.
In the winter I go skiing and skating.
Mm.
So it's like there's like a whole range of things now that I do. I run, of course, the standard one. Go to the gym. So it's like, just like I have this swath of outdoor activities that I pick from in every season now to just like go out and do. And the nice thing about moving and exercise is that, one, physical well-being, but the mental effect, the mental well-being of that is just so underrated. Like, it really like enriches the brain with these endorphins that allows you to just like forget about your problems to start with. Like, if I'm stressed about something, I just go for a 15-minute run only. You just feel better. You feel like you have a clearer mind to think and process that problem. So sports has been a big part of my rejuvenation there, but also music for me too. So
Yeah.
in this same period, to have learned to play like three musical instruments, or
Tell me about it. Which and which?
keyboard,
What?
guitar, and harmonica.
Wow.
Um, and occasionally my friends and I will also go out onto the streets and play and make some money
I
as
like that.
well in
I like
Montreal.
that. I like
Yeah,
that.
yeah. It's I mean, if you search well on the internet, you might find my videos.
Wow.
But but yeah,
I
yeah.
like that.
It's like so fun, especially when you like playing. It's just so enjoyable to play for an audience, and
Mm-hmm.
and Montreal is great for this, where we're based.
Okay.
You just have like street musicians all the time there. So I'd say music and sports has been like a big part of me. When I need to step back and like recharge, and to get back to all the problems, the millions of problems that happen in a company.
Mm.
These are two things that helped me. But at the end of the day, I think it's for everyone to just find that thing, but just to be aware that you can't just keep working,
Yeah.
which I have tried. you
Yeah.
will you will
Walking,
break
walking,
at one
walking.
point. You can't keep working. You just have to like plan those breaks so that you are able to recharge and move forward with even more energy.
All right. Yeah. I like that. I like that. The truth of the matter is burnout is real, right? Especially for founders. So the earlier every leader starts prioritizing their health, the better for them, right? It's
Hmm.
important. It should be a, like it should be part of your daily schedule, no matter how little it is. Take a walk, do something fun, right? Take a break, and
Yeah.
stay hydrated. These little things could really help you so that you don't break down one day, and business will always keep going on. So, but you need to do you
Yes,
sometimes. Yeah.
yes,
Yeah.
health first. Without health, nothing else can happen.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
true. So finally, I wanted to let's wrap up with this basically around there are a lot of leaders that are watching this. I wanted to find out what would be your piece of advice to leaders not minding where they're leading, whatever industry they're leading, or any founder, whatever solution they're building, whether they're still in ideation phase, whether it's still growth phase, whether they're at the echelon of their careers, not minding what advice based on your experience, based on what you've seen, based on how it's been for you and growing to health to where it is at the moment. What would be some advice you would give anyone watching, um, yeah, in their career or in their business?
Yeah, there's many things, of course, that could be said.
Sure.
Um, Maybe the thing that comes to mind as a thing that I would say has actually been really useful for me, both in the business
Yeah.
but also in personal life as well.
Yeah.
And that is the power of atomic habits.
Oh,
Yeah, of like doing something small that you want to do, something there's something big you want to do, but just doing something small every day towards that thing.
yeah.
And in a year, you realize you've achieved so much of that. And I can give specific examples. Maybe let me start with like the professional.
Yeah.
Um, part of what has led to Bema being alive to today and being where we are today is that I actually did not realize how hard the problem I was solving was.
Really?
I didn't realize how hard it was. I told you when we started, I thought it was just a technical problem. I would just like write code, solve, and be on my way. But then because I thought it was going to be simple, I took each step,
Yes.
the atomic steps. And
Yeah.
I did this. I'm like, there's still another step to climb. Okay. Another step to climb. Okay. Another step. But I was only like seeing one step at a time, or at least at most a few steps at a time. And I wasn't seeing the mountain that I was trying to climb. Because if I had seen the mountain from the beginning,
Probably wouldn't have.
I probably wouldn't have started. I would be like, and that's too high. I don't know medical. I've not done research. I've not done this. I've not worked with doctors. I've not done studies. How am I going to do this? Though I just have left it and moved away. Um, but so in that case, it was more of an accident that
Yeah.
I was just taking atomic steps towards this thing, and it allowed me to progress without worrying about the unknown future. But what I've actually tried to do in my own personal life with that lesson is use this for the things I want to learn, things I want to do. And I talked about learning to play musical instruments, learning French as well in the last few years as well. Learning sports. All of them were just applying the same thing. When I was learning the guitar, I played guitar every day for 15 minutes for 3 months.
Wow. That's
Like that was just
really
like constant. I would just like wake up, I was gonna play something 15 minutes, go to school because I was doing my masters then, and that was it. And just like doing this for 3 months, I just like the steadiness of that small effort, 15 minutes per day in it takes 4 days then to get an hour, right? And
mhm.
so after like 3 months, you're talking of, run the math. Like you accumulate basically a significant number of hours of training
True.
from just 15 minutes, like over time, like 100 days, that you're talking about like 1500 minutes there already. And so it's just the power of like doing, it might seem like a Herculean thing, but if you really want it, just, okay, what's the small thing I can do every day about this? Start doing that thing. And next thing you know, you've come really far. I did the same thing for when I was learning French as well. And for me too, one thing that really helped was really learning one thing at a time. So if guitar
Mm,
was something I was learning now, there
okay.
was nothing else I was trying to learn because I
Okay.
didn't have the multitasking ability.
Yeah.
So that morning learning time was do that thing and go. French was the same thing. With French, I had to put up to 30 minutes daily for maybe 6 months actually or more before I got to a place where I could now relax the learning and and ease it up. But like those atomic habits, just doing like something, you know, little every day towards that goal. If you put 30 minutes every day in a year for something, that's almost 200 hours. Like if you spend
Yes.
200 hours on anything, you're going to be at least minimum of average or above half of the world on that thing, perhaps. And so, and so that's like maybe one thing I'll just recommend is to not underestimate the power of just like atomic habits in achieving our goals. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. Doing one little thing every day. Stay consistent, keep doing it. Don't give up on it. Just keep doing it. Rinse, repeat, stay on it and continue. That's really a solid advice. Thank you. Thank you so much, Charles. I enjoyed this conversation. I truly did. I learned a lot from your experience building how it all started and where you guys are at now. And thank you so much for joining us. Hopefully, in the near future, when Ubenwa gets to another level, we hope to have you back again to tell you more.